is a solutions consultant at Adobe. Jennifer has spent the last year helping SMB, mid-market, and enterprises and Fortune 500 enterprises unlock the full power of Adobe's digital experience cloud products. Prior to her current role, she served as a trusted technical advisor, ensuring that businesses realize product value through in-depth technical analysis, identifying client opportunities, and recommending digitally transformative solutions. Jennifer's knowledge of Adobe's products in combination with her passion for e-commerce makes her especially enthusiastic, I can attest to this, enabling organizations on cutting-edge e-commerce solutions. And outside of work, Jen is a true adventurer, always seeking out new experiences and challenges, whether hiking new US national parks, designing jewelry for her own e-commerce shop, photographing people in places, or baking delicious Japanese confectionery. Jennifer brings the same level of enthusiasm and dedication to everything that she does. To know her is to be inspired by her, so please join me in welcoming Jennifer Hinkey. Go get him.
Monolithic, rigid architecture, steep learning curve. And I know some of these words may have just induced the case of the ick, or some worthy moment of cringe, because these words definitely induced some moment of cringe and ick in me when I was typing into Claude AI the other day asking, hey Claude, can you give me a little bit more information about Composable Commerce and Adobe Commerce? And it gave out these three words. And so little did I think that I would be here on stage trying to give a good Donald Trump impression of fake news, but indeed, this is actually fake news. What if I told you that in the last 18 months, Adobe Commerce has been making some significant investments in making microservices, API libraries, headless, and composability far easier, far accessible to make your ideal commerce site come true? Well, the answer to that in my presentation will absolutely be yes. And as a solutions consultant at Adobe, as Jenna had mentioned, I've just been working with identifying core challenges, core digital e-commerce challenges for some of our SMB, mid-market, and enterprise clients, and really transforming their sites digitally onto Adobe Commerce. So without further ado, I'm so excited to talk to you today about how Adobe Commerce, or Adobe, has simplified composability with really leavening the Magento 2 services with our extensible path to future innovation. All right. So this is a typical customer scenario that I often get introduced to. So let's imagine a fictitious ideal customer persona. Their name's Alex. Alex has now been hired as the head of IT for a mid-market retailer that sells luxury candles, aromatherapy, and other home decor goods. And Alex has been hired mainly by the CEO of this luxury brand to now deal with building out the e-commerce site. So Alex is now looking at, how do I streamline the front-end search, navigation, merchandising, customer, all under one platform? The CEO has a meeting with Alex and asks her, I've been reading these reports. 88% of customers expect a far more personalized digital e-commerce experience. And so I want you to focus on, not just content, but how do we manage content with a DAM? What about checkout, payments, fulfillment? Everything together. No, I want AI. I want it to be beautiful. I want it all to be streamlined. Yes, yes. And they're in this meeting, and Alex is like, okay, sure. For sure, I can definitely handle that. Another quarterly business review later, Alex is being asked by the CEO, and now the new CTO comes in and is like, yes, I like this AI thing. I like that. Yeah, let's get loyalty. Let's get marketplaces. Let's get reviews in there. Yes, absolutely. Alex, and you're in charge. Sweet. Amazing. Let's get this e-commerce site launched into the future. And so this is now Alex's deliverable for the year of 2025, which is to build out the most beautiful, the most personalized, the most hyper awesome e-commerce experience of all time. But of course, streamlining all of this together, in which we call the commerce experience, is now just a regular expectation of your IT or your development teams. And in doing so, in trying to weave and orchestrate all of these different components of your review service, your loyalty services, catalog, ERP, PIM, OMS, all together has only made it far more complicated and more cumbersome for your IT development teams. And even when trying to rework some of these connections, it's made it so much more clunky. All the different middleware that you might have and being able to make this possible into what would be a beautiful, personalized e-commerce experience. I mean, this is the schematic diagram, obviously very grossly reduced. But oftentimes when I'm having customer meetings, this is the diagram that I'm often introduced to. And so with that, your IT teams are often asked to build an e-commerce site that's almost like rocket science, right? And unfortunately, in today's digital, fast-paced world, your CEO, your CTO, or your executive teams might be expecting that you might have an Elon Musk on your team to build out a fast rocket and the new wave of future innovation of e-commerce. But of course, I'm not here to tell you that commerce should not be rocket science. No. Alex, in our fictitious persona story, now just feels like they're floating in space, and every time that the CEO, the CTO is asking to add in the ERP connection, the CRM, the OMS, the PIM, everything together into this e-commerce site just feels like it's distancing her away from a cohesive e-commerce strategy, like a floating spaceman. And so to really bring it back to earth, here's the reality, right? There's some good news, though. With Adobe's Composable Commerce, we're able to really ground ourselves in what is a cohesive strategy. No more floating around aimlessly. We're able to bring us back to earth and be able to bring our floating astronaut down back to earth and delivering experiences that are much more, not just grounded, but we're able to touch grass a little bit more. And the reality is that commerce platforms are becoming too complex to implement. So teams like Alex is managing, this is really the reality, is that the fragmented developer tools are often siloing these different teams, these different commerce tools. And in fact, a Predictions 2023 commerce report came out that a third of these digital businesses will actually abandon or restructure their projects because they are often too complex to execute or implement. And so with that, many new implementations will absolutely fail. And these custom UIs, they will inevitably crumble at the face of all these complicated post-launch neglect. And so all this work that you put into managing this beautiful e-commerce site and all these different connections, after a year, 2 years, it's now moved into obsolescence. It's now down the trash. And when you're looking at new platforms, new commerce tools, whatever it might be, these different engines, you're just recycling the same platforms, the same tools over and over again to basically reach the same conclusion, which is everything is too complex. It's just too much for development teams to handle. With Adobe, we take a more thoughtful approach to really making Composable much more cohesive, designed to really support these business outcomes. So rather than having these fragmented, disparate tools that are often incompatible or often incongruent in terms of being able to actually troubleshoot or develop custom applications and often brittle, point-to-point, code-intensive tools, we actually take a lot of these non-standardized siloed data points to actually create a much more standardized event-driven data layer that's orchestrated with an API orchestration layer called API Mesh and a unified developer tool that's housed under the schematic called Adobe Developer App Builder, in which we're able to extend the platform through microservices, through third-party services, as well as the core capabilities within commerce. And so here, I will be explaining kind of the Commerce Simplified vision, this schematic of how we take this thoughtful approach of what would be this disparate developer tooling to now a much more unified developer experience that is now possible with our capable investments that we've made in the last 18 months with App Builder. So let me introduce to you a little bit more about our multifunctional app builder. And when I talk about multifunctional, I want to use the schematic of a Swiss Army knife. When I say that app builder is multifunctional, to give you a much more simplified way to define what app builder is, it is really a developer extensibility toolkit that allows you to really extend and integrate these tools in a much more streamlined, orchestrated fashion. And it's not just a singular tool. It is a layer of multifunctional toolkits that enables you to really create custom events, orchestrate APIs into one federated API graph through GraphQL endpoints, REST APIs, a command line interface, Spectrum UI frameworks that gives you a lot more of that native capability over that framework to create experiences that are far more cohesive, developer tools, cloud services, that's all run on runtime, a serverless compute framework for running these third-party custom code. So that's why I like to use this schematic to describe App Builder as the development platform that is really multifunctional, like a Swiss Army knife. And so to really break this down even more, with App Builder, we really allow for 4 capabilities. So not just this orchestration layer, but really you can orchestrate, you can build, you can deploy, and you can operate custom applications through API Mesh, as I explained, which is this federated API orchestration layer, which really allows you to extend the platform with custom events. I'll talk about the 700 plus out-of-the-box events that comes with the license, with software development kits that allows you to really work with some of the pre-built integrations in our API library as well, and deploy with different developer tools, all hosted on the cloud. So you'll just see this extensibility framework throughout the presentation, but this is really the best way to explain how Adobe Commerce, or Adobe as a whole, really enables composable commerce in a much more simplified fashion. And so extensibility is defined not just as a middleware capability where we're connecting different disparate systems that are external in terms of third-party systems, but we can actually extend Adobe continuously with 3 core capabilities, not just the middleware where we're integrating third-party systems that are external. So example would be connecting to a PIM, an ERP, an OMS. But we're also able to extend the core services of Adobe Commerce. So this could be, for example, more custom logic or workflows that you might have. Maybe you have B2B workflows that you want to integrate, or maybe you have real-time inventory updates that you want to create on the PDP page so that it reveals how much inventory that's available for a B2B customer. Or user experience extensibility. So this might be an example like creating a sales dashboard or a visual tool that enables you to really visualize the presentation of this data on the front end. And so again, bringing it back, content and data needs to connect to customer touch points. And that's really the key here, is that when we're talking about extensibility with this idea of customization, we have all these data points, all these disparate systems, but really what it's really linking back to is these customer touch points. How do we bring it back to make it much more human, to be much more connected to our customer, to understand that we know how to personalize, but in a much more technically supported way. So to continue to expand on what App Builder allows you to do, we have what's called an Adobe Developer Console, which acts as your library to actually access many of these pre-built API connectors. It's our API library, and you can actually set up a templated project so that you can continually deploy these different connections through these projects that you can share with your team, and it's all localized on this cloud-hosted hub. Then you can also deploy these solutions through these frameworks with a command line interface. So perhaps you have a team that's a bit more used to the command line interface, then to be able to write in Node.js or JavaScript and code, and then be able to actually publish these apps on the marketplace that's hosted with our App Builder catalog that's built out. So I like to also imagine, I like using visuals because I think as Adobe, we are a creative visual company. And so I like to try to explain everything in a schematic or a visual diagram. So imagine that Adobe Commerce or this e-commerce platform is your dream car, right? So it is like, it's built for speed, it's efficient, it's built for customization. And that's what I like to explain Adobe Commerce as, is that it is your dream car. So I'm thinking like Cybertruck for me, but I'm joking. But imagine you can go 0 to hero within 15 minutes. So with extreme developer productivity, with App Builder, you're able to really extend the platform in a much more efficient way. So what would take normally 20, 30, 40 developer days has now been slashed over 55%. In fact, there are some projects that have been reported to actually slash the developer days or the time that it takes to actually set up a new custom application nearly from 60 to 1 day. So actually incredible. And with the familiar drive with Adobe UI, we offer familiar development tools like Node, GitHub, whatever it be. And the batteries are included in this analogy of Adobe Commerce being like your car. So everything that you need that's in the box, that's housed in what would be the engine, is available to you. And it's easy to replace if you please. It's cloud native. It's designed to work across our other Experience Cloud products. I think Ritesh and team has actually explained kind of the other products in which we create this digital experience cloud. And it's all open source, as we know at Magento Open Source, and developer first with a very large ecosystem of developers. So let's spin this around. So what can you really build with Adobe App Builder? Well, one, you can build out single page applications, and two, you can build out different microservices. So obviously some examples that I had mentioned before, you could create these cloud native apps that combine different functionality. So it might be that you might want to create, let's say, like a visual of there's actually one customer, Shinola, that uses like a visual watch application swatch tester. So you could build out your custom framed watch that is built out with using a single page application. And a microservice, so building integrations between different solutions as we saw earlier, and I'll kind of explain in the following slides. So some examples could be like a visual try-on, a virtual try-on, like creating like your custom fit, or maybe for your microservice, you might have like different dynamic pricing models or real-time inventory microservices as well, as I explained in a different model. So as I explained, we have Adobe Commerce as your dream car, but the core commerce engine, what is housed inside of this powerful 200 horse engine? I wish I could give you. Clearly I work in the car industry. Here with the core commerce engine, here are some of the core commerce capabilities that come out of the box with Adobe Commerce. And what's really amazing about Adobe Commerce is that, and it's not just built out of the box with, dynamic personalization features. It's all WYSIWYG, drag and drop. It's built for the marketing team. It's really easy to use functionally with catalog management, personalized commerce, B2B commerce, and B2C all in one platform. Clearly, I'm a salesperson because I'm just obviously just pitching Adobe here. But business intelligence, marketing, promotions, multi-site, regions, all of this is housed within this core commerce engine. But what's great about Adobe Commerce is that it's not just built for the marketer. It's also built for the development teams. And it's the best of both worlds, in which we're able to create this dream car. So you have all the out-of-the-box functions, right, in this, pointing to this engine. But let's say that you want to customize the framework, the paint job, the tires, the headlights, the informatics. With App Builder, or the development tools, you can easily change the way that the car looks, the way that you function, the way that maybe the leather seating might be, maybe the chassis, maybe the steering wheel. You can house different or plug and play different tools. Maybe that's like your analytics system. Maybe that's like your ERP. Maybe that's whatever it might be. You can create the analogy, the analogous situation for a car. And so I like to use this schematic because in my head, I'm thinking about Adobe Commerce as really the core engine to this car, and the framework in which we allow you to extend the platform is like all the other extraneous solutions that build out the most personalized dream car that you can imagine. And so as I have the multifunctional multi-tool at the top here, like the Swiss Army knife, you have integration, extensibility, and all of these different frameworks that allow you to create a new leather interior, for example. And so that is kind of the way that I like to think about this diagram about Adobe App Builder and Adobe Commerce. So who uses App Builder? So there's two main type of personas that might use Adobe App Builder. That might be system integrator developers or enterprise developers. So the system integrator developers might be a bit more familiar with Adobe Commerce or the Adobe Digital Experience Cloud, so they might be familiar with our DAM or our Content Manager with AEM and other Creative Cloud components as well. Or we have enterprise developers, so they're less nascent in terms of the Adobe ecosystem, but they're far more embedded into your own IT or your development teams. So another diagram here. So I talk about the car, this multifunctional tool. And so here, for people who are more diagram focused, this is probably another way to visualize how you can integrate and extend Adobe Commerce. So it is a modular, extensible platform. We're able to eliminate these these hindrances, eliminating these different obstacles in terms of a scalable, serverless environment. So effectively, what Adobe App Builder is able to do is that it gives your developers the capability to write programming and code in their own native language and then be able to deploy and orchestrate all of those APIs and different custom code to rapidly build out these applications with 700 out-of-the-box events and different APIs that they can build into ERPs and CRMs. So the key benefits to this is that you can extend your investment, it's modern, it's cloud native, it's also all-in-one solution, and it's scalable and global. So continuing onwards, I said that I would talk about the microservices. So within the core commerce foundation, like for example, catalog, inventory, we also have live search. So some of these microservices that are also part of the Adobe Commerce Enterprise version are actually housed and hosted, we have these microservices that are lightweight in architecture, so you can actually deploy this on your current commerce environment where you have live search. So that's powered by our algorithmic engine, Adobe Sensei, same with product recommendations. So these are enhancing the overall site performance, being able to discover products far more efficiently with AI enhancements, as well as catalog, payments, and sales channels. So think about like Amazon sales channels, Walmart e-commerce sales channels, and you can basically add on any of these additional services in these microservices that you can create using App Builder as well. And some of these that are up here, these are already available to you as well with Adobe Commerce. So basically, again, faster development cycles equals lower total cost of ownership, which equals enhanced dream car, which is your commerce platform. So here you are. We are, as I said, it's built for marketers, but not just the marketers. It's also development focused. It's the best of both worlds. So we like to call ourselves API first, but not API only. Whereas other tools might be boasting, oh, we're mock alliance. We are microservices, API, composable, and headless. But you don't get that same admin UI experience with Adobe Commerce. We support API connections, but not limiting you and your marketing team to actually be able to build out this site by having both the ability to extend the platform with your development teams, really flexible in that way, but also having all of the components out of the box as well. So here you have this diagram that continues to explain how App Builder houses API mesh that's basically connecting all of these microservice frameworks and components into your core commerce platform through live events with Adobe I/O, as well as other webhooks that you might have. There are 3 different components as well, in which you can actually extend the platform, I believe, with a no-code solution like Amazon Event Bridge, with webhooks, and then a pro code, which might be more custom logic. So with that, you can standardize this data and event sharing with making that possible. So I have 5 scenarios that might give you some more context as to what that might look like. So a very common one would be like sending an order to an ERP system. So here you have a shopper that is browsing online, they create an order, that order needs to sync, that data, that piece of data needs to sync between the actual order management or that ERP system into the what would be your commerce platform, so Adobe Commerce in this case. And so once that order is placed, that GraphQL API is then creating that order created event into the API mesh that creates that federated API call, and then it leads into the ERP system, so it creates that order. And this is a bi-directional connection, so not only is it updating both the ERP, but it's also giving that information back into your commerce platform as well. So this is real time, it's serverless, it's also pre-wired so that you have that integration between these different disparate systems. Another scenario might be retrieving product availability. I think I talked about this earlier as well, based on different regions. So a customer might view this in their browser. They have the view product category in storefront. That piece of data is now sent into an API mesh GraphQL call, and then API mesh invokes a serverless app, and that on the fourth step, that serverless app returns the available products based on the ERP's product available API. So again, just another scenario. Scenario 3 might be, for example, you have a content manager, and so you want to integrate some of those assets from your third-party DAM with admin UI extensibility. I talked about how with Adobe Commerce, you're able to really craft your storefront, your homepage, your front end, really based on the way that you really envision. And so you might have different assets that are housed in this DAM, and so you have a user that goes into the product page that are associated with those assets in that product. And again, the same situation, that call is created, it gets those registrations, and then it pulls the correct asset, it queries the system to then actually pull the right digital asset onto the storefront. The 4th scenario might be, for example, calculating tax or shipping, and you might have a synchronous event from the storefront that's now sent to the third-party shipping provider here in this green bubble as well. And again, the benefits of the Adobe Commerce or this Adobe extensibility approach overall is that it's really able to eliminate the custom PHP Commerce core extensions that are necessary to make this possible. You also have reduced customizations to the core application, which makes upgrades a lot easier. And then thirdly, you can address the injection of logic into Adobe Commerce with these process flows. So lastly, integrating with maybe like a loyalty service or a review service. This is also a very common situation that we see as well. So a shopper might browse onto that product details page, and again, that GraphQL call is created with the progressive web app, and then it's then updated into that third-party review system. So what I'd like to show is an example of how a customer, a current customer of Adobe Commerce, actually has created their own Adobe App Builder custom storefront. And this is Dusk. They are an Australian retailer with over 146 different locations, all in Australia. And they just went live with Adobe Commerce App Builder using some of the technology that I had just described. So with that, some of the core facts is that they have 146 locations with nearly 1,000 employees. They had so many disparate data points, and some of the data management capabilities were quite limited, especially since they had so many brick and mortar stores, and getting all of that to scale was so incredibly difficult. And so their technical architecture, what they were able to do was create these custom modules, a customer product order module that basically creates this event with the event-driven architecture, they were able to send all of these data points back into the Adobe Commerce platform using App Builder and federating many of these API calls using API Mesh, and then sending all of this data into their other systems. I know I'm running a little low on time, so I'm going to speed by on some of their core not vitals, what's the word? KPIs. So with using App Builder and our Extensible platform, the solution, they saw a 49% increase in acquisition, in customer acquisition. They saw a 12% increase in order count and a 10% increase in revenue just in, I believe, the few months that they went live with Adobe Commerce's App Builder. And I believe that their team was comprised of these many business and technical architects. I don't know how you get a fourth of a business architect. I'm totally joking. But point being, we're bringing it back. So as I mentioned from the very beginning, right, this is e-commerce. It should not be rocket science, right? E-commerce should not be rocket science. And like we talked about, all the time where you might have the head of IT who's given this overwhelming task of having to connect the ERP, the PIM, the OMS, the loyalty, the review, the gift card registry, whatever it might be, all of these disparate, incongruent systems all into one cohesive strategy, right? E-commerce should empower and not overwhelm. That's really the idea of Adobe Commerce and what the platform allows you to do with our extensible core commerce capability. And so when we're taking it from a bird's eye view, right, it might seem nebulous. It might seem like you're just hovering in the clouds and you're not really sure what you might be doing. But if we take it a step back and look at the whole picture, the whole world here, really what we're trying to do is empower our digital creators and the development teams to create their dream experience, their dream e-commerce experiences in a far more simplified way. So effectively, we're bringing it back to the thoughtful approach to composability. So taking this fragmentalization of different tools and this disparate, brittle code-to-code, code-heavy intensive system to then be able to operate, to build, to deploy, to orchestrate some of these API calls and the framework necessary to then give you the e-commerce experience that feels far more unified and far more orchestrated for your development team. So with that, thank you so much. Hopefully you learned a thing or two. And yeah, this is my information. Also, here are some great resources for you to visit as well. And if you scan that QR code, you can add me on, I believe, a LinkedIn invite. So thank you so much. I believe that's my time. It's exactly 3:30. So I don't know if we have any time for questions, but that is my call to action sales call. So if you want to see me outside in the booth, I'll be at the Adobe booth.
Great job, Jen. Leave it to Jen to fit 60 slides into 27 minutes. That was amazing.